Hello, this video will explain how water plays a significant role in The Great Gatsby, as well as go over the Chapter 8 literary analysis text-based paragraph. So let's take a look at water specifically and the role it plays in The Great Gatsby. Water, water everywhere. Water is an important symbol in The Great Gatsby. Let's look at it more specifically. So if we think about water as a symbol, and remember that symbols are often concrete items, things that we can hold in our hands that represent abstract ideas, so things that we can't hold in our hands. So water throughout the novel keeps coming up again and again and again, and that's because it represents one or more ideas throughout the novel. So let's take a look at the beginning where we see water right from the get-go. So Nick, Gatsby, Daisy, Tom, they live on what's called a sound, right? A sound is a body of water surrounded by two large masses of land. And this picture right here does a really good job of showing you from a bird's eye view what East Egg and West Egg look like, okay? So they kind of jut out into the water, and then there's this bit of water trapped in between each piece of land mass. That's called a sound, okay? So on the left side, we have West Egg, right? And that's where Gatsby's mansion is and Nick's little shack right next to it. Remember that West Egg is new money, right? People who have earned their money legally or illegally, however they might have earned it. That's where they live and where the riotous parties are. And people are very lavish and show off with all of their money, much as Gatsby does, okay? And then across the sound or across the bay, we have East Egg, right? That's where Tom and Daisy live, right? And we know that that's more old money, family money, inherited money, family that's been, or money that's been passed down from generation to generation into generation. And much more sort of conservative with the way that they spend their money. Definitely have big houses and fancy clothes and participate in activities like polo and traveling all over the world, but not throwing these lavish parties. Think about how Tom feels when and Daisy, when they go over to West Egg and they go to Gatsby's party, they sort of are looking around like, oh, what are these people doing, right? Sort of in a snobbish sort of way, because that's not the way that, their families have lived their lives and spent their money. So water right there separates these two ideas, these two groups of people, the idea of West and East and new and old, and sort of how they live their lives. When Nick goes over to Gatsby's first party, think about how he described the party, right? He was saying that he wandered around rather ill at ease, right? Meaning he feels uncomfortable among the swirls and eddies of people I didn't know. So take a look at how Fitzgerald even uses language right here, describing the people as swirls and eddies. And those are words that we use to often describe water along the shore, right? As it's coming in and out with the tide, sort of swirling and creating these eddies. Notice how Fitzgerald uses that language to describe these people that are at his party, even connecting the riotous partygoers with this idea of water. Again, water comes up again and again and again throughout this novel because it plays such a significant role. Think about Gatsby's parties. That picture right there sort of says it all. Everybody seems to be surrounding the pool, swimming in the pool. Gatsby's pool plays a really important role at these parties. And then we know at the end of the novel, or at least in chapter 8, when we find out what ultimately happens to Gatsby, right? Where does he end up? He ends up in his pool at the end of chapter 8, right? So again, water, sort of that reoccurring idea, that symbol that just keeps popping up over and over and over. Remember when Gatsby goes over to Nick's to surprise Daisy? What was happening that morning or that afternoon? It was pouring rain. And you guys know that we spent quite a bit of time looking at that in chapter 5 when we completed the literary analysis. But we saw, right, that water, the rain, the weather paralleled or mimicked the same feelings that Gatsby was having as he waited to meet Daisy, right? After 5 years, he he feels this dreadful panic, this anxiety, right? Well, we see that same sort of idea sort of as the rain waters on, or, the rain comes down and sort of rains on his parade, or mimics his feelings that he has as he. So as I was saying, sorry, I had to pause the video before I could keep going. Rain, again, we see that as an important symbol, or water is an important symbol when Gatsby meets Daisy. One more interruption, sorry guys. So water as a symbol. Think about how Gatsby, or James Gatz at the time, meets Dan Cody and how he learns the ways of a quote unquote rich man, right? How he learns to become Jay Gatsby, right? It's on Lake Superior. Take a look at the quote. To young Gatz, resting his oars and looking up at the railed deck, that yacht represented all the beauty and the glamour in the world. So again, that idea of water as a place, right, where we see this transformation or this change from James Gatz to Jay Gatsby. And where does that take place? On the water. And then this last paragraph from chapter 8. There was a faint, barely perceptible movement of the water as the fresh flow from one end urged its way toward the drain at the other. With little ripples that were hardly the shadows of waves, the laden mattress moved irregularly down the pool. A small gust of wind that scarcely corrugated the surface was enough to disturb its accidental course with its accidental burden. The touch of a cluster of leaves revolved it slowly, tracing, like the leg of a transit, a thin red circle in the water. So where does Gatsby end up at the end of the novel? He ends up in his pool dead, right? He's submerged in this water. So we've seen water, this reoccurring symbol, this reoccurring motif coming up again and again and again. And what we want to think about is what sort of is happening in Gatsby's life as water is around, right? So when he's on the Sound, right, at his house, right, he's made this transformational change from Jay Gatz to James, or from James Gatz to Jay Gatsby, right? And he's living this luxurious, fancy life, right? These people that come to his party, right, that are essentially changed into these wild, riotous drunks, right? That sort of transformation or that change happens, around his pool. And there's a picture of that. Okay. And then again, this idea that he's been waiting for Daisy for 5 years so that he can change back, his life to the way it was when he met her, right? So sort of going back, right? He says you can't repeat the past. Of course you can repeat the past. He believes that he can set things back to the way they were. He can make that change to living that same life that he was living with Daisy before, he left and went off to the war, and she ends up marrying Tom. Okay, and then this change or this transformation that he makes from James Gatz to Jay Gatsby, right? That again happens on the water. And then at the end, right, we sort of see this ultimate change or transformation where he goes from life to death, and that occurs in the water. Okay, so you're going to complete an assignment. You're going to complete an assignment